picture again?
No, you don't have to. Hey there, hi there, ho there. It's me, Bear, the Gen X GM. Hope you're doing all right. We are live. We're having such a great conversation in the backstage. We decided to go 59 seconds early for you all. And also, Bunny's not here making us late, so it works out even perfectly that way. Of course, I am joined by Cody, Brian from GameMasters, Sean, and Logan from The Hilt. But our guest of honor tonight is Mr. Tim Kask, who we insist we must call him Tim. So, Tim, welcome to the show, sir. Welcome to the Floor.
Thank you.
Now, Tim, I am going to open the floor to these gentlemen because they are much bigger D&D guys than I am, and they're going to have actual valid questions where I'm just going to be like, what was it like living in Lake Geneva? So
well, you have no idea how many times I've answered those kind of questions over the years. Various documentaries and just, nosy people. And yeah, I've had that question a number of times. Actually, I didn't live in Lake Geneva. We lived in Delavan, which was 11 miles west. Much more of a chill town in the summer. In the summertime, when as we call them, the Flatlanders were flocking to the lake, I went a whole different route up north around the end of the county and down, and I came into Lake Geneva from the backside, so to speak, just to avoid all the mobs of tourists downtown.
No, that's fair. All right. Does anybody have a question they'd like to open up with tonight for Tim?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll pull something. Oh, Cody. Beautiful. Go ahead, Cody.
So, Tim, lovely to talk to you again. We talked a few years ago. First off, where do I get the awesome curmudgeon in the cellar hat?
There were 4 made. A buddy had a friend who did these. He made 4. He kept one. I have one. There was one that was a real feminine blue that I gave to somebody who and it was in Dollywood the next week, getting a picture in it. And I don't remember what happened to the 4th. I mean, he priced them, and it was stupid money. Who's going to pay $30 or $35 for a ball cap, even though it's a decent cap and it's got a solid strap in the back and it's none of that, chicken wire crap on the top. It's a nice cap, but unless I can't make an order of 300 or 500 to get the price down, because otherwise my great grandchildren will be wearing curmudgeon hats.
You can't do a build on demand place like was it Red Spot? Or
I have never even looked into it. If there comes a demand, I might look into it. But
put a community tab on your channel. Who wants a curmudgeon hat?
No. Come on. I'm 75, retired, and living the life. I just got back from Gary Con. It's been a hell of a fucking 2 weeks. Oh, you cuss on this?
Oh, go right the fuck ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The Tuesday before I got gut punched with this hideous flu that lasted about 60 hours and made me muzzy headed for 2 days after. So we've been killing ourselves, we being Don Zamora and I, trying to get out the Lost Adventures for Gary Con. Well, he ran his candle so low, he ended up with an infection in his pericardium.
Oh, my.
That's the lining, around your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so he ran himself into the hospital. So needless to say, we didn't make it. Then Jim died. That was another gut punch of enormous magnitude. Hit me much harder than I might have predicted if somebody had ever asked me in advance. Anyway, so it's been a brutal 2 weeks.
I can imagine. Well,
Gary Con was great, but I further ran down the batteries. So this is the longest. I don't have con crud. It's my normal. Things are starting to pollen, so I'm getting my hay fever. I don't have con crud, but I have the rundown you get after, except it's lasted about 3 days now.
Okay.
But I took my great grandchildren with my wife out, 3 of them, to go PB golfing, and then we took them for pizza. And
nice.
So, it's coming back, and just the batteries got a little low.
Well, we appreciate you making the time for us tonight.
Oh, well, this is sitting on my butt talking. This is something I can do on my deathbed.
Are you kidding? You said you're living the dream. That is my dream, to do exactly what you're doing for a living.
Yeah, well, yeah. I just had a game come out with Old Guard Games, which is part of the world of game design. I just had Curse of the Weaver Queen come out about a week and a half, 2 weeks before GaryCon. The Kickstarter finally fulfilled. It's gorgeous. They took the first half's me and the second half's stuff I had done to say, okay, DMs, if you want to take this further, well, they took it further.
Okay.
So they made it a two-parter, and it's a very nice product, and I'm very pleased with the packaging and everything. However, it's a new kind of game box that I've never seen before, and you absolutely cannot put anything on top of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a new style design box, but and I'm not knocking it. Don't I don't know. I'm just real skeptical because sometimes when things are described for sale, they'll say dished or whatever. This will be creped. Yeah. By the way, just before I came on, I saw something somebody sent me a link that some dude's trying to sell Dragon 1, which is rated 9.6 for $13,500.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I sold my dragons a long time ago. I did not sell my Little Wars. I have a full set of adventure gaming and a full set of Gygax. But the dragon was just like, how much? Sure, hell yes. So
and now you're kind of like 13.5.
No, it was a good deal at the time, and so life goes on. It was a good. I didn't. There's a couple people trying to shuck and jive me when I came back into the hobby in 2006.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Jerry, for the membership. All right, guys, as always, we're going to establish the ground rules for the chats. Super chats in this channel, Zenith Comics Presents, will get priority. If you super chat in anybody else's channel, we will get to you. And if you just ask a question, we'll get to you at some point in the conversation. Beyond that, anybody else got any questions for Tim? Let's keep this ball rolling.
I do.
All right.
When you started out with the strategic review as the editor, what was the transition like when you went over and did Dragon Magazine? Because I'm really familiar with Dragon and not so much strategic review.
Well, strategic review is what we used to call a newsletter, simply because of its size and format. And it was several pages folded. Before I went to work there, when I first got to talking and dancing around with Gary about possibly going to work there after I finished at college, which was like 2 quarters away. He said he had this little newsletter. I was familiar with it. I'd seen it. I was getting it. And he wanted to turn it into a full-fledged magazine. And I said, sure, why not? And I was familiar with the rudiments of offset printing and folios and stuff like that because of a course I'd taken in junior college. And so, okay. On the condition that it had to be not a house organ. I wasn't going to move my family up to Wisconsin to publish a house organ. Well, over the ensuing conversations Gary and I had after that initial one, we both agreed that we were going to put out a magazine with the philosophy of the rising tide lifts all boats. And from that point on, Gary stepped aside, and he never once ever interfered with me taking the review and spinning out on July 1976 with Dragon number 1. Never once told me not to do anything. Never once came in and handed me something, said printers, everything in there that had his name on it, I thought was interesting. Every other article that I chose to publish, I chose just because, hey, I'll bet people will like this. I felt at the time that I had enough of a handle on what was the burgeoning game business to know what was going to be good and what people were going to be like. and what people were gonna like. And I never once printed any negative reviews of any kind in Dragon magazine. There was too many good things to talk about. And I was just like, hey, look at this one. Oh, check this out. You know, I was just having a ball doing it every other month at first, because then I did Little Wars on the off months. So I was putting out a 32-page slick magazine once a month by myself. And that's how I learned. And it got better and they got bigger. When I was at Dragon, by the time we hit issue about 20, it was all the printing and everything, and paying the artists and the authors was already covered by the advertising, because there were a zillion little companies, and whether it was a little ad or a half page or a full page or a back cover, they're everything. So certainly I'm going to run stuff about their product if it's good. And if it's not, I'll just thank them for their check and run their ad every issue. You know, and so we were turning and burning real quick in terms of how long it takes to get off the ground and start turning a profit. In fact, it was probably more like, because we did 6 and 6 and 6. I think it was like the year that we combined the two, Little Wars into Dragon. We jumped another 8 pages, I think, that issue. And I never added a folio or a half folio if I didn't have advertising, people that wanted to be in it to pay for it. I always had more ads than I could print, which is a amazing position nowadays. But if you look back then, I was the only game in town.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they were all going to come to my circus.
How time consuming was it when you were doing the whole thing on your own?
It's what I did all day.
So that was your full-time job. It wasn't a side.
Oh yeah. When we transitioned to Dragon in July, I had my last involvement with D&D. I'd done supplements. I'd written some for supplements. I spent a week. It literally we locked ourselves in Gary's office, and from it became Basic and AD&D. And then that was it. I backed away from the fantasy publishing part of the business because periodicals had plenty to keep me busy. Because by now, we're doing calendars and we're doing getting ready to do best ofs and stuff like this. So I was plenty busy there. Speaking of which, I got a copy of the old 1980 calendar right here. I'm trying to organize my basement, and so that when I go, whoever comes in to figure it out will have somewhere to start. But we because then I hired Jake, then I hired Kim, Joe was in there, Corey was in there. Corey was doing more administrative stuff, handling subscription and that. Joe started doing that, and then he got more responsibilities. He became one of the associate editors or something at one point. And it was just a big sleigh ride. I mean, that picture on the back of that Christmas dragon with us in the sleigh being pulled by the green dragons, that kind of it's kind of a metaphor for the ride we were having. Hee, let's go. And so it was great fun. And then, having learned there, I went on to do adventure gaming. And we were doing well, we were selling, but we were losing small stores because we were in the throes of Reaganomics by then. And over half the small hobby shops in the United States closed between 81 and 83 because they were mom and pop shops. And that was what we were relying on for circulation. So, okay, fold that tent. Several years later, I'm approached to do some consultancy on starting up a new magazine. And the Gygax brothers are involved in it. And then we get like 6 issues out, and the widow killed it all. And to be honest, I don't know that Gygax magazine would have held on maybe more than maybe a dozen issues, because the market was changing, the productions were changing, advertising was not there. Advertising revenue was not there like it had been. We mainly got what we got because it was big and splashy, and some weird people on the East Coast were doing, to me, very embarrassing blogs and stuff. There was one with these 2 ladies, females. Oh my God. And they were way over the top. And I was embarrassed as hell because it was all about, I'm involved in it. Well, I only started out to be a consultant, and I was on the masthead just as a courtesy. But I don't know where we might have gone if the widow hadn't stopped in.
You guys were just a little bit away from the OSC explosion, and who knows, that could have carried you well, because a lot of people would have started looking to advertise their products. I mean, I was a Canadian back in the day. I still am, but back in the day when you were doing the magazine, and I would see these ads in Dragon for these games with this weird art, and I'd be like, I need this. And then each and every one of them without fail had continental US only, and I'd be like, come on, we're just over the border.
Listen, you think that's bad? I had subscribers, all right, that were in Canada. I had subscribers that were overseas. I ended up having to deal with customs shipping magazines out, so I ended up being the distributor for White Dwarf magazine for a while.
Wow.
Okay, so just a distributor, that was it. And it was a huge ass pain. Gygax magazine, we had people railing at us from Britain and Australia about not being able to get it over there. Well, Jesus, a $20 magazine, and they wanted $32 in postage, and that's not the US.
Yep.
We pay what the home country wants.
Yep.
It's not us. I mean, people in the States don't realize what an amazing postal system we still have.
Yeah, you and the Brits have the best. Every time, I swear to God, it's insane. Canada, ours is garbage on toast, and I know Australia.
Well, I'll give you an analogy of what it was like shipping stuff to Canada. It was shoving it in over the door and wondering when they get around to it.
So I used to work for a distributor for cards, games, comics, magazines, and when we would pick up our border orders, it was a game of what can we hide at the bottom of the box that they're too lazy to look through, that they would never let into Canada if they found it. Every time. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, no, I didn't get in any of those shenanigans.
Well, we had no choice.
I'd already gone through the satanic panic, so.
Wow, that was just during the height of Pokemon and anime, so everything was being critiqued by Canada Customs. Anywho, all right, gentlemen, Brian, you've been so quiet. You must have a question for the man.
Well, yeah, so actually that is, you just touched on one of the topics that I wanted to ask a question about, the whole satanic panic. What was the general vibe in the office when all of that was going down? I remember what it was as a consumer and trying to defend, the game and that I enjoyed playing to, my parents, to teachers, in school. Just curious what
the vibe
was
laughter and smirking, because
free advertising.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I have some opinions of my own. That woman that went on the Tom Snyder show about her son well, I just think she was a shitty mother. And wanted to find something to blame. Well, no, everything I've read about this woman, she was a crappy mother. Dallas Egbert, with his tragedies, he had the shittiest parents you could imagine.
Yeah. No, he was like schizophrenic too. Like he had health issues.
Chipped off to university.
Yeah, 16 years old.
He was a brilliant kid. I knew him. I'd met him.
Yeah.
He was a brilliant kid, but his mom and dad shipped him off to university. And hey, we got the last one out of the house. Poor kid came home at Thanksgiving thinking he was going to have Thanksgiving dinner. The house is locked up. They're on a cruise.
Yeah.
He had to break in a basement window to get into his own home.
Yeah.
So you know what, and he never was in the steam tunnels and all. Yeah, that was all bullshit. But that one made the game. Dallas Egbert bullshit in the steam tunnels, all that crap. The game just took off, man. The rocket lit, and we all hung on. And we were reprinting and bigger reprints and more frequent reprints. We couldn't, for a little while, we couldn't handle the flow.
Nice.
So there's no such thing as bad publicity. Now, the Satanic Panic, on the other hand, was, guess who? Fundamentalist Christians that didn't have enough to do. And they saw devils and demons and that. The only concession we made to that hogwash was basic, didn't have any of the high-level demons or devils in it. All right, and the ones, if you're careful and squint at them, they had a different name, and so that was for little bright eyes to learn how to play the game with nothing in there that would offend mom. Gary's favorite retort to how we're weaving spells, all this shit is, if you think it's real, let me know where you spent the gold. All we got to do is roll dice and we're rich, and I've used that. I've credited him every time, but that's the best reply I ever heard.
I gotta say, yeah.
If you think this is real, where's the money?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And Blackleaf, I declare you dead. You have to leave the game. Jack Chick must have sold 100,000 copies of D&D for you.
One year at the Gen Con auction, we got a clear the building thing from security.
Oh,
so we got a packed audience in the auction, and everybody goes out onto the street because there's right there, you're next to it, large sidewalk, and so one of the auctioneers, his name will come to me in a minute, jumped up on a post and started reading Chicks, and the audience on one side of the street is, and they got this thing going back and forth, reciting the dialogue out of that thing, and it was hilarious.
That's awesome. A Jack Track flash mob. That's amazing.
Yeah, it kind of was, and that's one of the stranger things I've seen at a game con.
Wow. Just amazing. So those early cons. Now, when did you start going to cons? Well, how early did you start going?
The first one I went to was in 73.
Okay, so I've seen pictures of some like the early Comic Cons and stuff like that, and people complain about the cosplay they see today. They go, it's so sexualized. And then I see all these pictures of just women walking around with their tits out and dicks out, and I'm like, what the hell? Like,
okay, I'll tell you the story of the first costumed person that came to Gen Con.
Okay.
It must have been, I was working, so it must have been 76, because we were still in the Horticultural Hall in Lake Geneva. And this dude was about 6'3".
Yeah.
And weighed a good 240, 250. Some of it was muscle, and he had on a pair of, bib overalls with one strap. And he had orange yarn glued to the top of his bare feet. And a kind of a Lindsay Woolsey type shirt. And he was the first person that came dressed as a hobbit. The biggest goddamn hobbit that ever lived. But that was his take on a hobbit. He had the hair on the feet, the pants, the hump. And he certainly wasn't the most, he's still probably the most incongruous. But I've seen an awful lot of costume players that were like, no, you shouldn't have worn that. Both males and females.
Well, good news is you can still see that today.
I used to be amused. I would go out and watch the parade at Gen Con when I was still going to Gen Cons. And it was pretty amusing because some of those people had just astonishing costumes, and you could see they were handmade and that. And I admire the kind of fervor that goes into that, because they're obviously passionate about wherever that character came from, whether it was steampunk or fantasy or post-apoc, something, wherever it came from. Now, that said, I do think a lot of them look silly. I don't think they're as bad as some of the ones I see at Comic-Con. And some of those, I think those are mostly silly. However, then we had the guy that was inside a power armor suit that worked. I mean, he's about 5 feet across and about 8 feet tall. And we climbed into that thing and he was dying. He was like wearing Speedos. He'd come out and he was just drenched, because it was a warm August day in Indiana. And so, I mean, and then there's the ladies, females. Well, we're not going into what we call that saw as an excuse to wear next to nothing.
Yeah.
And a couple of them, I was grateful. And many more of them, I was like, oh, no, I didn't need to see that. Come on.
The worst I ever saw was at Montreal Comic-Con one year. This guy showed up. We saw pictures of it because I don't go, but this guy was basically Elvis, the Vegas years, but as one of the 300 from Thermopylae. So he had the Speedo and he had the everything, but he was the guy was like 350 pounds. You know what I mean? It was hilarious.
I don't know if I admire or I'm puzzled by the chutzpah it takes to dress up like that and go out in public.
Big chutzpah, big chutzpah.
I don't have it. Okay, I mean, I wear my cap when I'm doing my curmudgeon, and stuff like that, but I don't do costume. And I had conflicts with the who's the guys that beat each other up with foam swords. I've had conflicts with them all through the beginnings of D&D, because they were claiming to be they were probably the first LARPers, but before that they were Creative Anachronism, Society of Creative Anachronism, and they just took to D&D like limpets. And it got to the point where I was railing against, and this is back when I was doing adventure gaming after I'd left, I was railing against some of the sexist exhibitions they were putting on, like in front of the center, or whatever. So everybody had to see them. And, hey, if you guys want to go out there in the hot sun and beat each other senseless with padded sticks, I'm okay. But we didn't need the TNA that, you could have had another reason for him to be fighting, not rescuing the princess, who was wearing about what Princess Leia wore when she was chained to Jabba. But Leia wore it better.
Yeah, because it was more like Jabba wearing it. I get it.
But, well, no, I mean, just Leah, she pulled that suit off. This girl, not quite.
Yeah, there is a level of audacity that I sometimes see in the cosplay world. Not that I think it's bad, because there's some amazingly.
No, it's fervor. It's enthusiasm.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
as long as they don't begin to think they're those characters, there's no harm.
Have you ever read the book?
They're going out and beating up people or shooting people or getting beat up or getting shot.
Or hiding in the steam tunnels. Did you ever read the book Bimbos of the Death Sun?
No.
It's a really funny book about a murder mystery that happens at a sci-fi fantasy convention. It is a fantastically funny read. Like, it's really well done.
What's it called again?
Bimbos of the Death Sun.
Bimbos. Okay, I know what bimbos are.
One of them fancy words. You got to look them up.
No, I used to use that word a lot. Well, first out with you, ignorant bimbo, when somebody cuts me off in traffic or whatever. I'm a very verbal driver.
I can imagine.
Well, I'd rather just shout it out than bottle it up.
Fair. No, 100% fair. I echo what someone else said in the chat, which is I'd like to be adopted by you because you are the curmudgeon-y grandfather I never had. So perfect. Well done.
Well, I now have 7 great-grandchildren.
Oh,
I had 2 children. Each of them had 2 children. Well, my son's 2 children haven't even started. I don't think any of them are even serious about anybody. But my daughter's 2 have 6 between them, and I have a 7th that we've brought into the family because he's half brother
okay.
to 2 that are fully mine. So he's like, he gets an Easter basket, he gets Christmas presents, he's part of the clan. 6 of them are blood, and the 7th one has been brought into the family.
Wow.
And they range in age from 10 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 4 weeks.
Yeah. I get to see her again this Saturday.
Oh,
We're doing Easter on Saturday at our house so that they can go do things on Easter with their families.
So the real question is how soon do you get them into D&D?
Well, my 9-year-old granddaughter can pull all 3 story dice out of a bag and whip you a story just like that.
nice.
Excellent.
So you have done your duty. Good.
Well, as soon as we get her to focus, yeah. It's one of the few things she will focus on, and she tends to ramble on. But she's capable of, well, I think story dice are the greatest invention since sliced bread for DMs.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're mental exercises.
Yeah.
I've got a bag with about 40 of them, all kinds of weird sets. And I just pull one out and pull 3 out, roll them. And it's a good way to make hooks. It's like warming up in the bullpen.
Yeah.
It just gets my mind agile and maybe thinking, and I think any DM that wants to be better, it will teach you how to turn right when you thought they were going to turn left.
Nice.
I really do. Couple 3 sets you'll need to really, make it weird. You'll need a medieval set and then one with rockets and other things, because with my great granddaughter, okay. And I finally had to limit her in time with a timer because she couldn't go. She was doing 7-8 minutes. And she's almost the end. And I point to the 3rd one, which she hasn't gotten in there yet. And I was just getting to that and spins it right off into the 3rd die. So the kids got the mental agility.
Yeah.
And that's what my Wheel of Blame game is. It's all ad lib. And that's why we have so much fun, because I'm not there to kill you or even care if you kill anything, but we are going to have some fun. We are going to have some laughs, and we are going to think outside the box.
Nice.
I figure that's my mission, is to get people to laugh again and to think outside the box. Because in the way I play, somewhere between OD&D and 1st edition, everything, boy, that 20-sider gets warmed up. It used a lot. All right, give me a 20. They don't even know what for. But, okay, and they get a low roll. I guess that didn't work. Or, I guess you didn't see that and slipped, whatever. But I just get them jumpy, but rolling 20. Why? Just roll a 20. I'll tell you. And then while they're all rolling, I said, roll beneath your decks. Roll over your strength, whatever it is. And that's real old school. Lots of dice. Rolling. Not lots of multiple dice. So I do favor D4s. Took 6 D4s worth of damage. That's a mighty smack.
Tim, can we see that painting again, if you don't mind? I'd like to show it to everybody. There you go. Look at that.
I want to get rid of the glare.
That's okay. Looks good. Looks good.
Yeah.
That's
now
my druid.
Now, what's the story on that guy?
Well, that's Jeru. Well, now he's Uraj. I got a painting back here. This is in 1st or 2nd Dragon.
Oh, hang on a second. Hang on. Let me get you up there big
It's
on the
a very
screen.
early dragon.
Oh, wow.
Kind of looks like
Nice.
Vladimir Putin.
No, that was done by Bill Hannon, who did the original logos for both Little Wars and Dragon, and he did a couple of covers for me, including the front one. The front one was very bare and spare, for a reason. The name, the dragon. What's in the center there? A dragon. If that wasn't going to get anybody to pick it up, but we've been plugging the shit out of it in the last couple episodes or issues of Strategic Review. I've been teasing it for a couple of episodes. First time I had a little bar block and just the tip of dragon's nose, nothing else, just a white space. And the next one, the dragon's nose was out about halfway and had a couple of, wrinkles in the nose like an alligator would, and just a wisp of steam coming out of one nostril. And yeah, we've been teasing it.
Nice. Kabuki Kid wants to know, is there any story about the coloring for that original dragon cover?
Well, yeah, it was all cut lithographs. We started, that was all black and white when we started.
Yeah.
And so we cut lithographs for the wings and for the body, just the old, whatever that translucent colored crap was.
Yeah.
Lithograph might be the wrong name. But that was just cut with, the colors were cut with a razor, and it was very primitive because I hadn't quite mastered a full color front cover yet, and I didn't want to press my printer real hard on the first issue. So, and I liked the spare style. It was not what was becoming increasingly popular that you're seeing on the side of vans and stuff.
Yeah.
I like the spare style. And there's been a couple of homages drawn to it that are very nice. I like the first logo, the dragon, with all its little embellishments and everything. But that went away after I did. So they slimmed it down, made it easier to print. I don't know. It's a shame because that was a little, they dropped the. Oh well, still the same magazine that I started.
So this is the one we're talking about here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and those were lithographs. Now, if you look at the green, you'll see a couple of slits where the white shows through. The wings were cut with another one, and the back was kind of like spray painted.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what with. I think that might have been airbrushed by the printer. I'm not sure.
Huh. I think it's fair to
I got to see a proof of it, and I said, "Oh hell yes!" And we went with it.
For sure, yeah. Look, Tim, I think it's fair to say that Dragon Magazine did a great deal of heavy lifting for people who were getting into D&D and helping us learn how to run the game and have ideas and things like that. I don't think there's anyone that played D&D back in the 80s or even the late 70s that wasn't Dragon Magazine. When that magazine came out, you just digested the whole issue.
Well, I've had people tell me they drive 75 miles and then be pissed off because it didn't come in the day it was supposed to. Yeah. And this is 40 years later and they're still pissed off. Hey, I came to the mailman. You're the same time as everybody else.
What's your favorite issue you ever put out?
I'll have to think on that.
All right.
I've got a few favorite articles that I did.
Sure. Let's go with those.
I couldn't wait to publish the 9-point alignment system. I love that. That was always the way that I played, and Gary sort of played, because there's a lot of fudging around on what side are you on as a, because originally lawful and chaotic, originally in the original books, now the little ones, lawful and chaotic were used to describe behaviors.
Yeah.
Elves were chaotic because they were capricious. They did what they wanted. Orcs were pretty lawful in that they followed the same patterns, they reacted to the same things, and that's what lawful and chaotic meant when the book was first written, or the game was first written. That's what it meant. That morphed into, and ended up in the 9-point alignment system, which is okay if the DM wants to beat his players over the head when they screw up. It's not arbitrary. It's right there.
Yeah.
And it allows for a lot of side fun you get really screwed up with, I don't go into detail on your deities or anything like that. I don't care. Okay, you make up a name, and what is he? Okay, he's lawful good. Okay, that's fine. And that's it from there on. I don't hammer you with, well, Gary would hammer you with resurrections and cures, and oh Jesus, he would hammer you with that. All of a sudden your character is just, he's out for weeks of game time. Or you were on weeks of game time trying to go get him resurrected. I didn't go there. I once ran a game in a basement in Kansas City. And I didn't know it at the time, but all the players were ex-cons and had learned in prison.
I was about to ask that.
Well, and the guy whose house it was, he was not an ex-con. He was the pardon me, he was the only one who wasn't. And so, okay, the way I do that is I give out pre-gens that have a tight alignment channel. And so this guy I made him a paladin. Okay, he's got to go around and smack people when they're getting out of line. And I said, that's your job. You've got to stick up your butt, and this is your job. And I figured this is the most fun way to handle this guy, because my friend had already told me he was a little wild. So we got to a point where he wants to poke eyeballs out of baby orcs to get answers. And I said, no, you can't. What do you mean I can't? I said, no, you can't do that. And so he stands up on his side of the table. And so I stand up on my side of the table, knuckles down like apes. And I go, you can't do that. And he leans in toward me. And so I point at where the imaginary sign of his God that I told him he had at the beginning of the game. I said, because that won't let you. He backed off. And we went on. We played another couple of hours. So beating them with a alignment thing can be fun and useful if you need it. I don't say indiscriminately beat them. That's no fun. But it's there to use if you want. And the 9-point alignment system took all the guesswork out of it.
No, I'm a fan of the 9-point alignment system.
And so many people didn't understand that the original uses, if you look back in the Three Little Brown Books, chaotic and lawful were used to describe monsters and races. Monsters, well, actually, races is superfluous. Back then, monsters were anything that wasn't a player character.
Right.
It was just real easy. Monsters, that was everything. They could run from a goblin picking his nose to some horrible undead thing that's they're all monsters. So
nowadays referring to ascension creatures a monster is offensive.
Well, now we're going to get into that. So Jay Taylor would like to know if you have any stories about the creation of the Bulette.
The Boulet.
The Bullet. Oh, je parle français, moi. Fais attention.
I published the correct pronunciation with the monster in July of 1976.
Okay.
Dragon number 1. Boulet. Why? Because I said so.
Fair enough.
I think, no, that's not the way the French would say it. I'm not French. I was speaking the French at the time because de Gaulle was being a pain in the ass and wouldn't let NATO fly over France at the time to go do something they really needed to do. And at that period in time, I did not like France or the French because, you couldn't order a hamburger. You had to say it in French. They kept the language pure, and the French in Canada were just as bad. Canadian, Canuck, they were just as bad. For a while there, it looked like I was going to have to print both the French and English on the cover.
I live in Quebec. I
ignored it, and it blew over. But yeah.
I live in the legacy of de Gaulle's "Vive le Québec libre." Trust me. Anyway, the Boulette. Boulet, pardonnez-moi.
I'm going to hang up if you can.
Land shark. God damn, it's a land shark.
Good. Yes.
What's the story of its creation? Is I think what.
I did not. back in this period of time, half-page ads were generally sent as negatives, and one got mangled in the mail. The snail mail got mangled. So I was a day and a half away. It was Friday night. It came Friday, and I was going to print on Monday. So I got a half page. We had planned to start Creature Features in number 2 with the Katoblapa. So I had already had that one set aside and already mostly laid out, as a matter of fact. And so I went into Gary and I said, open the box, open the drawer, because in the bottom drawer he had all the little original monsters.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, which one hasn't been used by you guys? And he looked around, and there was one that was really dorky, and there was the belay, which they had only seen twice. It had run down the hallway and knocked everybody over. So they hadn't even fought it or anything. I said, okay, that's okay. So I took it home. At the time, the game, I will speak about the game and its cloud-like. The game was overrun with hobbits and dwarven ponies. Somebody in one of the fanzines had read back and found out that in 1846, some Welsh mine had 2 ponies that worked down in the mines. So, well, hell, now we can take dwarves on, we can take ponies on adventures through the dungeon. They can underground's no problem. So pretty soon, dwarven ponies were proliferating all across the game land, and everybody, have it this, have it that, have it this, have it that. And we were not enormous fans of Tolkien, aside from whatever personal enjoyment we got, because everybody had to be Legolas, or they had to be Aragorn, or they had to be one of the, and so way too many. So I said, okay, here we go. I got a monster that burrows underground, loves to dig hobbits out of their burrows and eat them, and dwarven ponies are the next best thing. And so I had DM saying they had thinned the herd of both. And I have a small diorama over here on one of my shelves that won a gold feather or gold prize, gold, whatever it is, at Gen Con. And the lady who did it turned around and handed it to me after she took it out of the display case and just gobsmacked me. And it is a boule bursting out of the side of a wall going after a hobbit who still has his frying pan in his hands, and the eggs and bacon are slipping out under the ground.
Nice.
She's one of the best painters in the world. And just, oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I have a boule preparing to dine.
Okay. Another question from the...
That's why that monster came out with those abilities.
Yeah.
To address what we saw was an imbalance in the game. Just like I invented psionics because there was no defense against thought eaters and brain moles and the mind flayers. Before the boule, nothing puckered up or made you pucker up like a mind flayer because they took away permanent stats.
Yeah.
And if they got you long enough, you can just throw that guy away and roll up a new one because he's just drooling on himself and barely walk.
Shadow and Sun says, hey, Tim, I got to ask, what did you think of the Arduin Grimoire back in the day?
Meh. Well, I'm going to be honest. Meh. Not much, one way or the other. I was friends with some of those. That was from... Stafford, and they're still in business. What is that company? Anyway, meh. I was so busy with what I was doing, even after I stepped away from the D&D production, that it had to be pretty spectacular to catch my attention. And I gave space to non-TSR games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of space. Nobody could ever say I was one-sided in that regard. Usually if there were 10 articles in there, maybe 2 of them would be about 2 different TSR games and the other 8 were all about other people. and other stuff.
Okay.
It's an interesting piece of writing and compilation, but I never saw the necessity to adopt it into my world.
Fair enough. Doc Flamingo for $5 says, what was the first game outside of TSR that was viewed as serious competition in terms of quality?
Well, we thought that Traveler might, but we were wrong there. And how can any game where you might die while you're rolling up the character hold an audience very long? We sent out C&Ds to small, and I cannot recall all those because I wasn't involved in that, but I know we did. The biggest competition we had was a goddamn Xerox machine. People were photocopying the whole damn book, and we weren't getting a dime. And we were a small growing company, and we went after those people. In fact, poor Jim Ward was tasked a couple of years with going around and busting people that had the great big piles of Xerox because they were illegal. So that was a good game that might compete with that. I really don't recall anything. And I was there 75 to 80. I really don't recall anything that I thought was like, whoa.
Fair.
I really don't.
Not bunnies and burrows, no.
No.
I love the professor who wrote it, and I think it's a funny game. I think it's wonderful to play a couple, 3 times. And then if you're either into it or you're not. And it's fun to get into for a couple of games because how far? Far. How far? Far. You know, their ability to judge distances and stuff.
No.
It shows a lot of knowledge about rabbits or conies or, you know, any of the related. And Dennis did a wonderful job in that regard. It didn't. The craze, is, to my knowledge, did not last. The big numbers did not last more than a year or two. I know there are still people that play it. I know there's people that play it once in a while just for fun, just for the heck of it. And you know, that's anybody that's going back after this period of time and still playing it, even once in a while, shows that person at least feels that game has quality and staying power. But I really don't remember anything that we thought was going to be seriously, because I guess they swatted enough people with small people with the C&Ds. We laughed our asses off when SPI came out with their fantasy board game thing, and it stunk. Too many counters, too complex rules.
Yeah.
Avalon Hill tried a couple, 3 times to do something until they bought Titan from Dave Trampier. They missed every time.
Titan was a good game.
I
played Titan before it had been written up. I played a demo game in the dirt under a tree with Dave and Jason. Hey, we got to show you this game idea we got. So we got stoned. It's like 6:30. We went out there, and he had a pocket full of army men, and we picked up some sticks and twigs. Okay, and the twigs are this and that. And he showed me the weird women system, and I'm going like, whoa, that sounded like anything I've ever seen. The only problem with Titan was it was very complex rules. A good game if you both knew the game well. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful, intricate strategy game. But it was a tough learn. It was you had to climb a high hill to learn how to use that one.
Now, so after Dragon, we see stuff like White Dwarf, we see Challenge Magazine, we see a bunch of imitators come along, essentially trying to sort of vie for the crown, right?
Well, White Dwarf competed with us in Britain from the get-go.
Yeah.
They might have jumped in 3 months after, or no more than 6 months later, they started publishing.
Okay.
And so they were, because it was so difficult to get them over there, they were the dragon in the UK.
Sure.
And Gary and Ian, they got together and proceeded to put out the silliest book of all. You can guess what that is, but anything that's got a flump in it is silly.
Maybe the Fiend Folio by any chance?
Oh yes, FF. Though I have a different word usage of the 2 F's. Foolish fuckery is what it is. And if you watch a lot of British humor, this would appeal to Brits. Well, some of it. But if you don't watch a lot of British humor, you're just going to sit there and scratch your ass. A big marshmallow that can take you out. What?
We loved it. I'm telling you, in high school, we loved that book.
Well, we had a problem of feeding ideas out, and Dragon Magazine was as much that as anything else. We published Blackmore to show people, hey, you can do this really neat temple and you can work it all out and everything, and you can make that the center of your game. Oh, here's another race with the Hagen. All right. And we kept chunking out ideas to help people build up their campaigns, to flesh them out. And I published fiction that was hated at first. And then when I stopped it, I go, hey, where's the fiction? And I was only publishing the fiction. Well, number one, I got to republish a Gardner Fox story that had been out of print for 45 years. I got to reprint a Fritz Leiber story that had been out of print for a gazillion years. Elsbrag de Camp, who that read fantasy back then wouldn't have published this stuff if they had the opportunity, mainly because it's ideas. Here's stuff to mine, steal, adapt. Because we were still pushing that thought, that's Appendix N was put together to say, this is what we read. This is where our ideas came from. Okay, you can read it, you can not. Read 3 Hearts and 3 Lions. Oh, there's the Paladin. That is the genesis of the Paladin. Gary loved that book. So did I at the time. So he formed the genesis. It became the Paladin. Bio break. I know what that means.
So, Tim, I got a question about this stuff, the white box, right? And all these supplements. Now,
Yeah.
I don't, you came in after the white box came out, but I'm of the
No,
understanding.
I
Oh, you
did
didn't?
not.
Okay.
Oh, God, no. I assembled enough of those goddamn brown boxes. Oh no.
Well, I didn't know that, but I did have a question about the writing of the supplements. And I know that appears you had a little bit more involvement in these than we're led to believe, right?
Well, I had a lot of involvement in them. The supplements were put out. Greyhawk is easy. That was everything that Gary couldn't get into the first books because we were limited by the number of pages that we could print.
Yeah.
Blackmore was a sop to Dave Arneson. Here, Dave, you can have a supplement.
Yeah.
And he didn't like it, but he still cashed all the checks.
Right.
And so, let's see, what came next? Eldritch Wizardry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that almost killed the brand. That book almost killed the brand because hobby shops were sealing it back, little mom and pop shops were sealing it back up and sending it back to us.
Yeah.
The joke is that it was drawn by a 15-year-old girl.
Right.
Now, I didn't know that till 10 years later, 20 years later, I guess. But yeah, it was drawn by a girl, but they thought it was, that's part of the, demons and naked ladies and, right. Mom, So we learned the hard way. Don't go there if we can't help it. And there was gods, demigods. I'll tell you where gods, demigods, and heroes came from exactly. All right. Like I said, the other stuff we were trying to ride herd on the crowd and give them good ideas and keep them from going down dumb alleys. Gods, Demigods, and Heroes came from a letter we received. We used to take turns, Brian and Gary and I, whose week is it to read fan letters or questions? Because as it was always the case with the old board games, in the back, you got a question, type it out on a single piece of paper, enclose a self-addressed stamped envelope, and somebody will answer it for you. All right. So we did, we got those kinds of letters. Well, this was very neatly printed, probably 3 sides of a page, page and a half or 3 pages, whatever. And the guy was lamenting the fact that he didn't know what they were going to do the next time they got together because they had just essentially trashed Valhalla.
Yeah.
They had destroyed the Bifrost Bridge and killed Odin. And I'm reading this, and I start to chuckle. And I'm just chuckling and chuckling and chuckling. And finally, because our office doors were only a little ways apart from each other, Gary goes, "What the hell are you giggling about in there?" And I said, "Well, listen to this. Brian, come out here." So I got him standing there, and I started reading it. And pretty soon, what? Gary's nearly swallowed his tongue by now. So that's when we decided, okay, Odin's got 600 hit points. And this is before AD&D reminding.
Yeah.
Odin's got 600 hit points. Go kill him now, you little turds. Odin's got 600 hit points. And then we got the other pantheons. And, it was all right, now try that again. What kind of wimps were you fighting?
Yeah, exactly.
Back then in the day, if you were a 12th level, you were badass. I don't care if the whole damn party was 12th level. They shouldn't have been able to take out Valhalla.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they killed the Valkyries, too. I mean, they literally depopulated Valhalla. Well, not the next time. And so we published Gods, Demigods, and Heroes for that reason at that time. Now, it proved to be very popular, which led to Deities and Demigods, which was the next step up in potency and power and purview. So that came directly out of some group somewhere. I don't even remember where the letter was from, that had wiped out Valhalla on a weekend, like 7-hour adventure.
So were you involved in the Deities and Demigods, that first draft? You weren't? I was curious about the decision.
I was out of D&D then. I was no longer in production. Yeah. I was in periodicals. I was no longer in TSR games. I had nothing to do because if we did, we had to pay each other because we each had separate budgets and we had to write checks. So,
so you don't have any behind the scenes scoop on the decision to include the Chaosium stuff, the Cthulhu and the Melvin Banana that they had to remove?
Nobody consulted me. I was not privy to the decisions. I do believe that having had some interesting things go on with me in the magazine and asking permissions and whatever, if they'd asked me, I said, I think you better check that out because public domain's not what you think it is. And so they had to pull it, which just made the first books more valuable. And it was a lesson learned in TSR that they weren't omnipotent. But I had nothing what to do with that. Nothing.
Right.
I wasn't even on one of the bull sessions about what pantheon should we include. Because if I had been, we'd have had Incas and Mayas in there.
You talk about valuable. I had a copy of it in high school, grade 10. And I had the one with the Melvin Banana and Cthulhu and all that. And a buddy of mine found out.
Ents. It had ants.
It had ants, yeah.
And hobbits, not halflings. Hobbits.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah.
My buddy wanted it.
Screwed up all over.
Begged me for it, and finally I traded it to him for a carton of cigarettes.
And now that's about a $2,000 carton of cigarettes.
But man, that carton of cigarettes did me well in grade 10. So I was a good, like you were talking about with the Dragon magazine, was a fair trade at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mean this
Who
is
knew?
2K now? What?
Who knew? Nobody knew.
There
Sorry,
you
I
go.
dropped something. I had to see if it's important.
Better keep this one intact. It's my niece's inheritance.
Well, talking about Blackmore and Dave Arneson, you were around when Dave Arneson was floating around. What was your view on Dave, and what was his involvement back then?
I don't want to trash a dead guy.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Dave had great ideas and almost no organizational skills or communication skills to explain his ideas.
Yeah.
A lot of what I did in they literally, true story, I got a peach basket about this big, about that tall, for a half pack or whatever it was. And it was full of pieces of paper, some typed, some handwritten, a couple of different, some in cursive, some in printing, and no idea what the hell they were about. So I took that home. That's why I was using the spare bedroom. I took those home and I spread them out all over the floor and kept the cat out and tried to figure out what I had. So it was pretty easy to figure out with the temple. And I found myself having to write about 30%, 25 or 30%, to stitch the pieces together, sketch ideas together. I printed Stephen Marsh. I printed his Sahagin people. I printed I included the Temple of the Frog.
Mm-hmm.
And about 30% of all the rest of that I had to write to weave it together. And that was my baptism under fire of writing something a gamer wrote. Dave was cruel, mean-spirited, and very dismissive. That said, TSR screwed the pooch when they tried to hose him out of first edition.
Yeah.
Never should have gone there. I said so at the time, and I was told to shut up. I'm in periodicals. Okay. Didn't have enough stock to force the issue. Okay. Dave had great ideas. He was mean-spirited. After every issue came out, we always got him on Fridays. Everybody took one home, and he'd come in on Monday and with all the typos or whatever circled and tell me, 12 donuts. Now, when you're one guy writing it, proofing it, and then proofing it again, that's why I brought in more people to proof, so we could proof each other. But I asked him, I said, well, I could certainly use some help in this division, and I could even, pick up part of your check. Oh, that's not what I'm here for. But I never did figure out why he was there, because he left after several weeks. And then I found out he told shitty stories about me that weren't true for years afterwards. I was a druggie. I'd passed out in his favorite recliner and burned a hole in it. Well, that recliner I looked at real hard before I sat down in it the first time. I wasn't sure it was going to hold me. He just told hateful stories that I was even unaware of at the time. But that just goes to show how small a person he apparently was. I don't, that's what I know of him. That's how I dealt with him. And then he shit all over me.
Yeah, it's your experience. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, before we started the show, you were mentioning that you are okay now with talking about why you left TSR. Would you mind sharing that with us? Well, whatever.
Have you read any of the excellent books that have been put about the days of TSR? There came a time when Gary no longer had majority interest in the shares. For a while, about a year and a half, Bloom's had so much, Gygax had so much, they'd each had to give me the same number of shares when I came into the company. So all of a sudden, Tim's got the balance. If the Blooms and the Gygaxes were at odds, I usually came down with Gary because Gary had better instincts on what might sell than Brian, Brian was a bean counter. All right. And so when they got control, I was the first to go. They offered me a position. I was pulled out of periodicals and told I could go work under a person I despise to this day for much less money. I said, screw you, I resign. And so I resigned that day. It was years later that I found out that Gary had been outmaneuvering that, because he sat there the whole time looking miserable and never opened his mouth. And it was only years later that I found out why. Now, after they canned me for being his confidant, they canned Menser. They canned anybody that seemed to get close to Gary got fired at some point because the Blooms saw him as a threat.
Right.
Yeah.
And usually because Gary had people working with him that had game brains, they knew what they were doing. So that's why I left. The people at Ralph Parler said, hey, you want to do another magazine? We'll move you down, and you'll pay to move you down here, and we'll get together, and they'll put up the money, and I'll make a magazine. And so I moved my family to Cincinnati and went to work down there, and we got 13 issues out until, like I said earlier, we were one of many victims of Reaganomics when it didn't trickle down as far as us.
Yeah. For
You
sure.
know, we lost countless distributors, small mom and pop shop distributors, and just I'd find, I'd sell 80 copies and lose 90. I'm hustling, finding new places to put it, and I'd lose. I was just and after I lost a few thousand of my own money, I said, screw it.
Yeah. How do you feel about the direction Dungeons and Dragons has gone since your time at the entire end of TSR, WotC, and where we are today? Like, do you have any thoughts about the whole process of the evolution?
Oh, sure. We can start with the editions.
Sure.
First edition AD&D obviously started it. Second edition, I thought, was a good job of cleaning up typos and making clarifications. Why somebody thought they needed a third is beyond me. 3.5 was an absolute piece of filth, and not because it had any prurient interest in it whatsoever. It's just a piece of garbage. 4 became a pinball game on the tabletop. Oh, gee, you just ran into 4 orcs. Well, shit, there goes the next 2.5 hours. That's how long it was going to take you to resolve it. Now, having said that on those, 5's another kettle of fish entirely. 5 revamped it and attracted a whole lot of new players. And for that, I salute them. Not my D&D, but it is D&D. It is still the descendant of the D&D I helped Gary write. So, and it's brought a lot of new players and new interest. Now, some of the shit online, like that Critical Role, oh God, why do people watch other people playing a game?
I don't know.
I don't know. Why would you?
Yeah, why would you do that?
And the people playing the game are half-ass actors that can't get a real job. Okay, I've never understood that dynamic ever. However,
I'm right there with you.
I'm seeing a lot of 5 people taking an interest in going back. I get questions like, is it true you can really die if a poisonous snake bites you? And dies like in bold caps. And I go, yes. And if you make your saving throw, you still get half damage for what it did to your nervous system. And the guy just shriveled. He just couldn't wrap his hand. Because I understand in 5e, there's about 3 rolls you got to fail to actually die. That's bullshit. That I don't like. However, it did generate a lot of interest. That 3rd roll kept him in the game, all right? From a marketing point, if I were a historian looking back, I'm sure that had a part of it. But I'm seeing a lot of them taking interest in old school. Now, whether it's early edition D&D, Swords and Wizardry, which is a wonderful, it's a wonderful set of rules and a wonderful book. And I'm not at all prejudiced, even though I wrote a introduction to one of the printings. I wouldn't have if it wasn't.
Yeah.
Even though I'm friends with the guy who did it, if I didn't like his book, I'd have declined politely. So in that regard, it's probably been a boon. Next year or so, we'll see how that boon shakes out. If the interest in going back and playing the old way dies off in a year, it was just a flash in the pan.
Well, it's not dying off.
I don't see that either yet. But hey, remember, I was one of the chief big money auctioneers at Gen Con. I remember the year that all of a sudden we got 80 vampire books. 2 years after vampires became a big thing, that lasted less than 2 years, and everybody was selling their vampire rule books.
Yeah.
So it can last a year and a half or so, and then just somebody pokes a needle in the balloon.
Michael Chad for $5 says, "Thank you, sir, for pioneering our hobby."
You're more than welcome, because my God, we had a good time doing it. I did, at least. I had a good time doing it.
Now, as a whole ass actor who's gotten lots of work, allow me to say that I love your opinion on that one, because it is honestly how I feel about 99% of people who do live play as well.
That
So
includes us.
as much of a hypocrite as it makes me, because I do run live plays here on the channel, I completely understand, and I do not understand the appeal of Critical Role.
All right. Can I tell you about a project?
Sure.
We're waiting. The shithead in Lake Geneva that had the museum and all that, if you follow those he's been screwing with my partner Don Zamora. He dropped a dime to customs and said there was contraband in our pallet, so we lost our whole first printing.
Jesus Christ.
And so we have a second printing now. We're still waiting to clear out of customs for the last 3.5 months. The game is called D20 Delving. All small, all minuscules, as we would say. It's all minuscules, and it's a better version of the old TSR dungeon game.
Okay,
Move around some squares, go in a room, whatever. Now, the game has, also like dungeon, a buttload of cards. That was the worst thing about the old dungeon game. It took you 15 minutes to get all the cards where they had to go. So all our cards, monsters, traps, treasures, rooms, whatever, have a QR code. And when you scan it with your phone, you'll hear me read it.
Oh, neat.
We are aiming this at sight impaired, including them into the fold. Here's a game.
Sure.
Or like my granddaughter, when she was 5, wanted to play with her 11-year-old brother. So she couldn't read the cards the game we were playing, but it wouldn't have made any difference with this one. And we think we found a way to make Braille dice that will hold up.
Ooh.
And so it wasn't advertised, but everyone's going to have a set of Braille dice. Now, NPR wants to talk to us about this.
Nice.
And the National Association of the Blind has expressed an interest. And so if either of those, if the National Association decides to endorse it, wow. What a neat thing to have done. We have provided something for people that are sight impaired.
Yeah.
Or illiterate. Doesn't matter either way. I've spent a lot of my time doing volunteer work as a tutor. I spent 20 years with another organization here in Cincinnati. So I'm real excited to get that out and show it to people and look how cool this is, because I had a lot of fun reading the cards.
Nice.
And I know I have a voice that I can manipulate, and I'm aware of it. It's a gift. I was born with it. And to be able to use it in that regard was a ton of fun. Nice. So I can't wait until we get those damn games out of customs and get telling, because I think if we get an endorsement from the association, we'll probably be ordering a lot more games from China.
Cool. So King Eric, greatest of all, says, Tim, did you work on Boot Hill or Top Secret?
Yes, on both. I play test No, take that back. Not Boot Hill. No, I picked that up after I had been up to my first Gen Con. And because when I was in Carbon, my group in Carbondale didn't know it at the time, but they were playtesters. Because Gary and I kept in touch, and I'd try something new, and he'd try something new, and then, okay, how'd it work, etc. So we notoriously a couple times took breaks and played Boot Hill for a weekend or something. Okay, top secret. I was drummed into a test and managed to weasel out from then on. It was not my cup. No, it was not my cup of tea. Run around as a spy, I like to generate mood and atmosphere when I'm reading a description of a room you've just stumbled into. I don't need to remind you that the tension's high and you're sweating, because if a good spy movie's got a lot of tension.
Yeah,
kind of wires your nerves a little. Wires your twist your wires up. Winds you up a little bit. Now, I'm not knocking the game. There are lots of people that enjoy it. Swell. Wonderful. It was not my cup of tea. And so I was only available on a volunteer basis to be a playtester then because I was pulled back. And I tried it once because they needed a warm body, and I begged off after that. Just not my thing. Obviously, there are people out there because Merle recently, last year or so, year and a half ago, put out a new edition, and that was started. The idea in this stuff came out of the Gygax magazine people. So it's just not my thing.
That's
the only post-apocalyptic game I would play would be Mutant Crawl Classics because of its simplicity and ease of its system.
yeah.
It's not a genre that I'm real familiar with, but shit, you don't have to be. Everything's a mutant. And so, the reason I would love that as a DM is that, you think that's what it is? Oh, you think it has only that many hit points? Or only those powers?
Yeah.
Because everything's mutated. Sky's the limit. I like Dungeon Crawl Classic because the funnel game particularly is a good step back on the time machine into, all right, let's start. You got a pile of first level you got a pile of 0 level player characters literally in front of you, and they die off, and you go through, and whoever lives becomes level 1, and now you can eventually start the game. I love that aspect. Don't get so hung up on these guys dying. A lot of people spend way too much of their emotions getting wrapped up in what's really doesn't exist beyond a piece of paper in their head. And people get too involved. And I've seen people sink into this in extremes that weren't good for them. I've seen relationships destroyed. I've seen 2 engagements broken off because of something that happened in game. Now, granted, I got a lot of years of, so these weren't like right after another, but I've seen that twice.
Well, that's basically what led to what you were saying. You hated the 3 death saves in 5th edition.
We had a stable of characters. In Lake Geneva, everybody in the early game had a stable of characters. Because if you were playing in a campaign that had some geography to it, well, if that character's over here and you're playing over there, well, I guess it'll be Bruce this week. Or maybe you don't want to play a fighter again and you'll take out your cleric.
Yeah.
And so we never got that emotionally invested in any one player character. And so, it's a bitch. You're building this guy up to 5th, 6th level back in the old school. It's a bitch if he died. But I didn't go into a depression and need medication to come out of
it. King Eric, greatest of all, for $1.99 says, thanks to Tim for making the greatest game ever.
No, I was unless you're talking about other games. No, I was only a part of it. I helped. That's all I've ever played. Thanks for being part of it.
How about that?
I helped Gary shape it, and then I stayed back.
Logan, ask a question, sir. You've been quiet for too long.
I was gonna ask. Yes, I was. Thank you. Tim, you have a great passion for the game, clearly, and I have.
All games.
I
I'm
love
a
games.
gamer.
I've
I'm
been
not a
gaming
D&D'er.
since '83, and I've been running games more than 35 years. I have a rule number one, and that's to have fun. Do you have anything like that going over the years?
Oh, absolutely. I get a lot of questions on my vlog or whatever my videos. How do I know if I'm a good DM? And my answer is always, did you guys have a few laughs? Did they come back next week? You're a good DM.
Amen.
But you got to have some laughs.
Right.
Now, I run a game that's completely ad lib, and we very often disrupt the whole room that we're in, bursting into laughter and in inopportune times. Because it's the wheel of blame is not about me killing players. I learned that. I could do that. I did it for years before my cancer diagnosis. I did it for years. An 83% kill rate, somebody told me, at total time. And I said, well, damn, okay, you know.
Only
And,
83? Amateur.
83. Yeah. Come play in my game.
I want to see that. I want to see that so badly. You have no idea how much.
Well, the wheel of blame is, I'll explain it briefly because I run it online. Now, the only people I've been doing it for lately are a bunch of guys in Okinawa and a couple ladies. And we get together 3, 4 times a year and we play. The wheel of blame is pre-gens. Pick the one you want. No magic users. Because with magic users restrictions on guessing what's going to happen, they'd be nothing but a meat sack in my game. My clerics are quite potent because I don't do clerical spells. They say prayers, and they have an ability within the ramifications of the 2-2-2-1-1 of saying that many prayers of that potency. So they got them all at their fingertips. Now, I hand everybody an index card, and on it, they write me 2 things. And I tell them nouns with as few adjectives and adverbs as possible, because I still don't understand why the group that gave me a World War II flamethrower with a faulty ignition system got upset when it exploded. As I told them later, I probably wouldn't even have thought of making it blow up. Just, whatever. So, for instance, bakery and cookie monsters. So, do I get big gingerbread men that are belligerent, or do I go Sesame Street? Well, it just all right. And the fun is at the end of the game, we go through the encounters one by one. Oh yeah, remember we did this? Remember we did that? Well, that's because I got this card that said this and that. And every now and again I hear, oh damn, I died on my own card. And so this one was a mouse and red bricks. And as I recall, I made a very militant Mickey Mouse, an early, Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse, and he was making slaves make red bricks. But of course, they don't know that when they walk up. They go, oh yeah, you see these guys with funny heads, and there's a big building ahead of you, and steam coming out of this, And so we go in there. So for me, it keeps me sharp. For them, it keeps them laughing. I go, oh yeah, up in the distance, it's overrun by bugbears. And then you find out the bugbears are 2 feet tall because of the distance distortion and everything, because they are actually inside a wheel. So they can see 2 kilometers and it takes 3 to get there. So I get to put them in any environment I want. Now, I'm not going to put them under the water without a cowrie shell to stick up their nose to let them breathe. And I'm not going to float them in the air without some kind of flotation device, because what would be the fun of that? But underground, above ground, in the air, underwater, the wheel has everything available to it that I want to play with. And we have fun, and we mostly laugh. Now, I run this game for up to 7 people online on my Zoom channel. I charge $90. Get 7 people to divide that. That was at $12.50 or something, something ridiculous like that. So, I'm curmudgeon in the cellar, And my video, like it says there, mentioned in the cellar, contact me there. And if you want to run a game, well, once my PayPal goes ding, then I send out the pre-gens and the little rules thingy about what to look for. And like I said, these guys in Okinawa have already played. We played 6 times already. And I got another one coming up next month, I think. So, and they're great fun. And it's not always the same, same 7 people, but there's always a couple, 3 from the last game.
Nice.
And I think they think that one day they're going to find out something I did before. But it isn't, because I get 7 different cards every time.
Yeah.
And the only rule in the game is if you think I'm on your card, be quiet. Don't metagame for the group. And if 2 guys put on fish, wow, all of a sudden 2 out of 7 can't say a word. Oh, that's great fun for me. They can do stuff. They just can't suggest or advise.
I got a buddy in the chat who's asking, what did Gary think about the boulet?
He thought it was great because when he saw it 8 hobbits and ponies, it was exactly what we wanted it to be. And again, I stress, Gary never, ever reprimanded me on anything I published. He never, ever came in and said, publish this. It was my baby. So, that would have been so unlikely for him to, hey, yeah. And actually, he thought it was pretty cool, and the land shark, and I went through how I heard the Saturday night Candy Graham, land shark, and so that was the name I needed besides Boulet, was the land shark, common name. And he thought it was great, especially when they started cleaning out pony herds.
We got somebody asking about a pickle story.
A pickle. Oh. Well, okay, this is one you have to put PG at least. The very first time I ran the Wheel of Blame was here at a con in Cincinnati. And I had an adult group that included one lady who I just knew which direction she was pushing. I'll explain in a minute. So they all gave me a card. And one of them, the cards was Pickle and Red Dragon. So I decided to have a pickle about the size of the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, skewered on the top, the granite point of a very steep sloped mountain. And then from the distance, they saw what had to be a dragon. But then they closer and closer they got, they really wasn't very big and only had a 4 or 5 wings, foot wingspan. Pollen season. Now, in every encounter, they have to find a talisman. It's a coin, has a picture of me on one side, and on the back it says, "It's not my fault." And if they don't find it. Well, yeah, see, in the Wheel of Blame, the only thing I roll is my monster's 2 hit and my monster's reaction or, initiative. If they get hit, they roll damage on themselves. If they do hit, they roll damage for the monster. I give them a lot of Care Lights and Care Seriouses. I just look at them as Red Bulls and Super Red Bulls. And so they guzzle a Red Bull and they roll a 1. Well, and don't be mad at me that it's only worth 2, D6 plus 1. I didn't roll it. So it's never my fault. Never my fault. So they're hunting around for the token. Back then, I believe I was actually using these little wooden keys I'd found in a craft shop. Little ornate, like Victorian keys. And so there's the pickle, and the dragon's been subdued, and they're running around trying to find the pickle. So the lady in the group, and I kind of expected this because I thought I'd already guessed what her card was going to be, goes up and says, "I'm going to lick that pickle." I mean, there's no doubt of the innuendo here, right? And we were all adults, just busted out laughing. Well, I was so, dude, didn't see that one coming. So I rolled a 20-sider, and I got like a 17, so it cured all her hit points. So the next guy comes up, and he I'm going to lick the pickle. Well, I rolled like a 7 or something, so he got half his points. And the third guy runs up and he's going to lick the pickle. I rolled a 2, and I told him he better come back in a couple hours because the pickle seemed to have lost its stamina. And at that point, the table erupted. just erupted. And they eventually found the thing. Well, then we got onto another one. The card I had was Undead Vixens and Portal to Another Dimension. So by this time, I figured it was probably her, right? Because I didn't like the Vixen class. Yeah, we already had several nasty female things that didn't want to do good things with you. But anyway, okay. So I troped it real easy, go through the wardrobe. At which point they were immediately attacked by 123 rabid undead female foxes. Oh, the look she gave me. I should have been rabid after that. But she looked, and so it was her card. Okay. That's what I try to do. I twist them around. And sometimes I do such a good job, they had no idea where it came from until I read the card. And they go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and so that's why I do it. I have fun. The repeaters, they try to stump me. I have a list of things you can't bring, you can't have on the card. No magic items, no player characters, no NPCs, no magic, no 10-foot poles, no nuclear weapons. I had to put that one on recently. Somebody put on a card atomic bomb. Okay. I figured, okay, all right. I just put it in a huge iron box with a giant lock on it, and figured, okay, it's out of the way, and we'll talk about it later after the game's over. Well, no, the guy playing the archer wanted to know, how big is the keyhole? Would my arrow fit in there? Well, yeah, it would. After I told him the keyhole, oh, my arrow would fit in there. I said, yeah, it would. Okay. Well, damn it, if the guy doesn't roll like a 19 or a 20 and go in the keyhole. So I said, all right. And I rolled, and it was a really low number, which means, the timer just started ticking. So I said, well, you hear a tick, tick, tick coming out of there. Okay, well, we're going to go around. I go, no, you're not. What do you mean? I said, the nuclear weapon just went off, and you've all been vaporized along with a third of my wheel of blame. And that was only the second TPK I ever had. Until I decided no more atomic bombs.
Fair.
Brian,
you got a question for the man? Brian,
Me?
you've been so quiet. Yeah.
Quiet man.
All right. So, I do actually have a question.
Does that beard way down your chin and make it harder to talk?
It does, yeah.
Like
But it also makes it easy to hide. So.
Oh, well, never had one that long. Thank you. My hair used to be way, way, way long, but never mind.
So, outside of Dungeons and Dragons,
I'm married.
what has been a game that has really turned your eye, made you go, whoa?
Are we talking about board games?
No, role-playing games. Role-playing games.
Well, I just recently saw a game by Jason Vey. Some of you may know him for Facebook.
I know it. Yeah.
It's called The Wasted Lands. And I'm really taken by the premise that sets the whole world up. I thought he did a really good, marvelous job of setting up a very interesting premise into which we could step and play. Very, very interesting. I was very taken. Now, I'll be honest, he ran out, and I was zipping by on my scooter, and he ran out and flagged me down. Here, I want to copy your game. Okay, so I decided to read it, and it's pretty damn good. Anybody with a smattering of reading behind them should have no problem jumping into this world. And that's something that a lot of other games don't. They make up a world or a setting that is too different, when you could just, use the basic standard settings and just take them off in your direction, make them exotic. Some people just make a jump that didn't work. And I don't think Jason did with this. I don't. Now, I also saw an artist that came from New Zealand to the show. And he could only bring one big crate. And he said he had trouble getting through customs when it had gnomes written on the outside. This guy worked for Spielberg for 17 years as a designer. And oh my God, does he have a take on the gloaming. It's the deep, deep forest. Now he's going to put it out for 5e, but I'm telling you, anybody that gets a hold of a copy of this can easily convert them down to the, whatever system they're playing. It would not be very difficult at all. And I think it's going to make adventuring in the deep, deep forest really weird and really fun. That's what I just saw recently at GaryCon. I play as many or more board games than I do RPGs. I basically only play RPGs when I'm at cons. The gamer group that I have here, we play board games.
What is one of the better board games that you recommend?
Tom Wom's Feudality. Xenoland put out a thing of it, and I think Steve Jackson still has a light. No, Steve Jackson's got Awful Green Things. Feudality. It's wacky. It's weird. It's Tom Wom. It's strategy. It's screwing the other players every chance you got. When you got a card that allows you to do it. In my group, that's A1. If you can screw the others. Now, if you want a fun one to play with people that aren't necessarily hard gamers, there's a game out called Scoville. It's about growing peppers and crossing peppers to get other peppers, amassing enough peppers to cash them in to get chili recipes, which are worth points. It's about planting your peppers strategically so that the other people can't run in between your peppers and get the great one that you were planting. It's about blocking in the last guy so he can't move at all. It's got a wonderful screw your buddy get parts to it, but it's also got a strategy with what colors you plant where, and you have your own secret little lab where you can plant up to 9 peppers during the course of the game and not let the other guys know that you're going after the recipe that's got the 3 ghost peppers in it because it's worth 27 victory points. So it's got that type of planning. Of course, not every recipe comes up every game, but there's always at least one that's worth a lot that's hard to make. I like that. I love Gru, the Barbarian card game. Goofy, silly, just fun. I have almost all the Ticket to Ride games and all the variants and all the little ones that were selected from reader submission, player submissions. I like that game and game system. 883 Viking. It's a wonderful game. It's the Great Army coming in and running amok all over England, and Alfred the Great hiding out in the swamps and hoping the Vikings don't get him. Great game. It has a real nice touch of history to it. So I like games like that too.
What's the highest level D&D character you ever kept alive?
12, I think, in the old school, which would be like a 35 nowadays. Start at 8,
No, you start at 1, but you go to 8 by the 3rd session.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's crazy. But yeah, I had 2. I had a magic user, and I also had a dwarf that went one level than the book said because something happened at GaryCon and he became a minor king. And so I didn't play him anymore. I just sent his troops whenever we were having a big battle. Because my dwarves would come up. And this is before the Hobbit movies and shit. My dwarves would come. Yeah. Well, I had 4 units of dwarves from the old heritage models. Yeah. He had the first dwarves out, and he was the first one to do ring mail by poking a pin in the green stuff, and it came out looking like ring mail. So yeah, and actually I had 4 units that had 32 figures each.
Yes. Coco B would like to know, do you have any thoughts about the Buck Rogers in the 25th Century game that TSR had put out?
I got a copy of it. I won it at a festival carnival thing for St. Rudy's School of the Deaf. It's okay. I mean, there's a lot. It depends. A game depends really on who's playing it and who's playing it with them. All right. Buck Rogers is great for probably 9 to 9 up if they have an interest in playing games. And, if Buck Rogers is a hard sell if you got a younger player who's not into rocket ships.
Fair.
There's an old game called Serenissima. And it's all about the trading empires of the Venetians and everything around the Med. And the combat is very abstract, but it's a lot of fun. You don't need the history, but it has some history underpinning it. That's another one I like a lot. And probably my favorite board game is Fight in the Skies.
Mike Carr.
Yeah, I've been playing that since I was at TSR. And the character that I lost that hurt the most in those campaigns was my Lieutenant Mouse Hockey. And he went out on one of the abstract games. We would do abstract patrols, and we had to all turn in our squadron orders, and then Mike would decide who saw when at one time, and then that's how we got the games that we'd play at his place. And Mouse Hockey went out and never came back, and he had 5 kills. It's the only ace I ever had in that game. Only ace.
Have you ever played any superhero role-playing games?
No interest. Everybody's got a superpower. Well, it sounds like 5e. I don't like skills and abilities. I don't like that. I think that those things are built up during the course of play and becomes part of your character's backstory. I don't like that. Ask the questions to get the information. Don't roll the dice. I do a perception check. No, you don't. Tell me what you're doing. And I want to hear that you're examining each wall from top to bottom. And I don't want a damn dice roll. Tell me what you're doing. Because especially in OD&D, it was all about gathering information. If you don't ask me any questions, how are you gathering information? Don't roll an ability table and expect me to tell you something. No. Ask me the question, I'll tell you. Ask me to expand on it, and I will. But don't roll a die. Oh, yeah, well, I have this 87 skill in the woods. And no, you don't. No, you don't. Now, the way all right, now, 3 of the character classes came out of people from my group in Carbondale. But the way we had a thief, we had a guy that played a hobbit, and the first couple of times he tried, he opened locks. There's always a base chance. And so if he did it more often, I started giving him +5, +10, whatever. And he became the de facto thief because he had like a base 70% chance of opening. He didn't have to be a thief. He was just good at thieving. All right. And now, you come in and it's like, here you are, a first level thief, and you got the perfect gloves, a complete set of burglar tools that cost you $30 on Zemu, and no.
Shit, my face hurts.
Guys became good at things because they succeeded at it frequently, and I gave them a better chance each time. And that's the way we had a guy who was in the group that was really good at doors, locks, whatever. And he became the party thief without having the capital THIEF. He started as a fighter. He was a hobbit fighter. He became the hobbit thief, and he became quite good because he kept doing it. He'd make some amazing die rolls, and he just week after week he kept making the die rolls, and they became easier and easier. So I figure by old school standards, he probably had the thieving skills of 8th or 9th level.
Sure.
And back then, boy, God, 8th or 9th level, we would retire characters between 9 and 12 and play other ones.
Yeah.
Because we had all the money amassed, so we built our keep, we hired our retainers, and we went and lived out somewhere in the boondocks. And once in a while, old players would get called up for some reason or other. We had troops that we'd send when we were going to have a chainmail or a swords and spells battle. And we played other characters to try and get them to that position where they could then set themselves up for a life of ease and retirement, unless they didn't want to be easy retired.
So I have a question. Back in the old days of play, how much?
You have no idea how that pangs every time somebody says in the old days of play. Well, I mean, 50 years ago when I was just 25. Yeah.
Allow me to rephrase.
No, that's quite all right. That was too good a shot to miss.
So when the game was being developed, and like the role play was still a fairly new thing there, like what depths did the players go into the role play? Were you guys purely strategic, or did you consider?
I can only say my group, which would have been in September of '74 when classes started back up. All right, started with 5 guys that wanted to play. The next week it was 8, and pretty soon we're up to 13. And I'm running them all in one group because nobody knew what was going on. So they were very easily explained to, very wary. I said, "Are you sure you want to do that?" That was me. Oh, well, let's rethink this. It was interesting. Some guys wanted to play with a voice. Well, not long at my table. Because like I said, a bunch of half-assed actors that aren't even as good as what's on Critical Role. No, I didn't mean that shit. Now, I will admit, one time, I was DMing a game at GaryCon back before they were in the Geneva Grand like they are, or Grand Geneva that they are now. And something happened within what was going on that a very, very large snake, a constrictor of some sort, was involved. And I don't run games as a rule unless I'm sort of half-baked to begin with. I slipped into parcel tongue. And I don't know where it came from. I've not been able to do it before, but I had 8, 9 guys at my table with their jaw open. Because I slipped into parcel tongue. I was spreading my tongue and slurring my S's. And I just fell into it for 3 or 4 minutes. And then, it was counter over, et cetera, et cetera. So I wasn't even tempted to do it. I just did. And I guess if I was a wannabe actor, I might. But when I get somebody that kind of wants to sit down and, "Prithee, sir," whoop, whoop, whoop. Through the magic of magic, everybody is speaking in contemporary English. And if you happen to be from Brazil or Portugal, which I had players this weekend, it's okay. We'll work through your accents. Don't worry about it. But I don't get into that. That seems a little vainglorious to me. That's, it is role playing, but it's not acting. It's role playing. You're supposed to sink yourself into this character's skin and just go about whatever's going on. You're not doing it on a stage for the Duke.
Again, Jason Harris's comment must be brought to the forefront. If OSR was a dude, it would be you, Tim. It would be you.
Well, good, because I'm kind of stuck there.
It's fantastic. Listen, I'm.
Well, it's where I like to play, and that's what
but that's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Well, that's what I encourage on Convention in the Cellar. I don't care what adventure, what edition. If you're having fun, you and your peeps are doing it right. Because the whole point of gaming is to kill some time that you're not slaving away at the factory.
Yep.
Or hoeing corn for your family.
Yep.
So, whatever you're playing, if you're doing it and having fun, fine. DCC, MCC, fine. I was involved with both of those. When Jim was writing DCC, or working with DCC, I got to see it. And when we went to Mutant Crawl Classic, I got the first read on the manuscript. So, I know I have a good understanding of what it is. And if I wasn't playing swords and sorcery fantasy, I would be playing post-apocalyptic, just because it's even wilder.
Now, is it fair to say if you're having fun, even if you're just being a bunch of half-assed actors thinking they're performing for the Duke, it's okay?
I don't care about but I don't understand the people that want to watch it. There's too much better shit on Netflix. Come on. Because I have made the mistake of tapping in 3 times. And I'm just like, huh? I mean, they even sent me that big coffee table book a couple of years ago. I think it's still sitting over there behind me. I don't care about those people. They were trying to make a cult of personality out of those people.
I agree.
And there's some other, it was part of what was going on the West Coast, and some of the shit they tried didn't work. So the proliferation of character classes in 5th just runs 27 fingernails down a blackboard for me, for my sensibilities. You don't need all those things. I'd be dead before I'd let a dragonborn into my game. The one thing that is really, really, really bad about 5e is everybody starts out buffed. Just by picking a character class, they're min-maxing at the onset.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding the guy that's got the best prevention. No. Go out and write your own backstory. Become the famous picklock. Become the famous wall climber, whatever.
Well, I'll tell you, something I got into a lot of trouble for with the critters, as they're called. And like you said, you'll die before you let a dragonbane in a game. Well, I'll die on this hill happily. Critical Role's impact on the gaming community is minimal compared to, say, Stranger Things or Big Bang Theory, which reach far larger audience.
Absolutely. Now, I got nothing personally against any of the Critical Role people. I don't know that I've ever met any of them. But it just seemed to me that they were a bunch of wannabe actors trying out a gimmick to see if anybody pay money to watch them play.
Turns out they did.
American Dream.
Yep. Canadian one, too.
I'm not going to give them any of my money to watch them because I think they're a bunch of jackasses and jackanapes. But, I don't need to have people declaiming, I think I'm going to go attack the dragon, in a declamation that sounds like it ought to be on a rostra somewhere.
Oh, dear God. Any final questions, guys? We're getting down to the last few minutes here. Any final things we want to ask Tim before we let him go for the night?
Oh, damn, you do have a long limit.
I have no final questions, but I do want to say, Tim, it's always an honor to hear you talk. Always an honor to have you on.
Just say it's fun.
Fun.
It is fun, man. It is fun. It's really fun. You always bring a good time wherever you go.
Yes,
and I really appreciate that. But not only that, you're one of the last of the old guard, right?
Well, and if I sat down and wrote it all out, I've got a hell of a CV. All the stuff I've been involved in since 1974. So yes, I'm aware of that. But I keep telling people, damn, if I hadn't been having fun doing it, I wouldn't have.
No, exactly.
So it's not like Gary chained my foot to the writing table and made me. No, I was having fun doing it. Yeah. And I still have fun doing it because that's what games are supposed to be. Fun. They're a diversion.
Yeah. Agreed. Logan, Sean, Brian, any final questions?
Oh, come on. You don't have one more gut punch for me? Come on.
No gut punch. It's just a fun one. What's your favorite race class combination from AD&D?
Human. Pure strain.
Nice.
Me too.
If I were to start a new first edition character, it would probably be either a druid or a cleric. I've done all the fighters I wanted, and I've done a few magic users. I got a magic user up to 12th level legitimately, and back then that was a mighty accomplishment.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Now 3 sessions and I'm pushing 12. What? So,
Logan, Brian, anything before we wrap this all up?
Just thank you, Tim. You're awesome. It's been great talking to you, listening to you.
I love to talk. You might have guessed that by now.
Me too.
Brian?
Yeah. So, all right. Modules or homebrew campaign world? What's the preference?
In my days nowadays, it's my home campaign, my own world. However, I believe in modules if for no other reason that new fledgling DMs should buy one and run it and get a handle for going home and creating something that you assume will be better. I think they're a marvelous teaching tool that we never had. We created them so we could score tournaments at conventions that made us shit tons of money. And that's why the G series was done for a convention in Detroit that we took up, a couple hundred of each of them, and we'd put them on sale after the first one was over. We'd put on number one. We sold out every one we took up there and wish we'd had, 200 more of each one. It was a new concept from us. Judges Guild have been doing marvelous stuff. Judges Guild, if you want to just find something to drop in and make your own, the city state of the Invincible Overlord has got not only the amazing city setting, but there's 7 or 8 other small side adventures right there for you. I mean, when it came out, we were using the something mines as a whole side adventure that lasted a couple of sessions, and that was just a little extra thing tacked in on the side. The Sunstone Mines, I think that was it. Yeah, the Sunstone Mines. So there's nothing wrong with an adventure if it's well written. There's a lot of them out there that are crap.
Yeah.
If you find one written by somebody that look for a name you recognize. Barring that, stick your hand out and go pot luck. And if you like him, go look to see what else he might have done.
Yeah.
Yes, Cody.
I just want to add one final thing before we close out. I'm going to give you, I want to shill for you a little bit, because if you like hearing Tim talk, make sure you go to his YouTube channel. It's a weekly show, right, Tim?
Yeah, unless I'm at a con. Yeah.
Right. But it's usually a weekly show.
49 or 50 a year. Yeah.
Make sure to go up there and subscribe. He does that show. It's great. I watch it every week.
Yeah, a lot of people watch it on Saturday morning. We're eating their breakfast cereal in lieu of Saturday morning cartoons. That's what they've told you. And I said, oh, man, if I can replace Mighty Mouse, on it on.
There you go. You'll never replace Underdog. That's just the truth.
Oh, I wouldn't try to.
No, there you go. Listen, Tim, I'm going to tell you
I
this
did
right
put
now.
him in an adventure once.
Well, I'm sorry.
A flying dog.
Okay.
Without the cape. They kept kicking their ass. That was a few years ago.
Tim, of all the guests we've had on here, I got to say, this is the one I can officially title was a hoot. Like, my God, man. My God, man. I'm trying to get to GaryCon next year. I hope you're there, because I just want to buy you a beer.
Pretty soon. I think as of next year, GaryCon will be the only one I'm going to. I made a commitment to the family when Gary died that I would go to GaryCon as long as I'm physically capable.
Nice.
There's a new con in Battle Creek this year in July that my off and on, sort of partner is putting on, called Wizard Tower Con, something in July in Battle Creek, that I'm going at least for his first one. And if it does well, he may do others.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, I won't be going back.
Fair. Well, listen, if I make it to GaryCon next year and you're there,
I'll be there. Unless you read I died the week before, I'll be there.
Well, hopefully.
And I don't mean that frivolously, because my great friend Jim, he called me on Friday night telling me there wouldn't be a pie because he was in the hospital after a heart attack. I told him, I can give a shit about the pie, get better. And I called back on Sunday and he was non-responsive. And an hour and a half later, his wife came in and signed the papers and they turned off the machine. And then his son texted me like 2 minutes after they pulled the plug.
Jesus.
So, and I haven't been that broke up about a friend dying. I don't know. I can't think of another one I got that's broke up. Even Doug Ray down in Texas, who ran North Texas RPG Con, which is a good con. He and I were diagnosed with cancer on the same week. And they opened me up and I was 2 going into 3, and they opened him up and he was 4. So he metastasized all over, and he still held on for 5.5 years with stage 4 colon cancer. And yeah, we were close because we went through the chemo shit together, and you know, not the same place, just phone calls back and forth, pumping each other up. So that hit hard, but Jim was worse.
I think we can honestly all agree that one of the things this hobby has given us is some lifelong friends and people that we all know.
Without a doubt. That's why half the fun of going to GaryCon is seeing people you only see at GaryCon once a year. Now, some of them you might call during the year or whatever. Jim and I were much more frequent than that. One of us called the other. And I've told the story before. And whenever he'd call, first thing I'd ask him is, have you lost any more bits yet? Because he was having a series of amputations with his diabetes. I'm sure it was the diabetes that stressed the heart. But and he'd laugh. Nope, I'm holding firm. You know, that was just kind of the level of our friendship, that I could say something as heinous as that and he'd laugh. And that's the only reason I did it, because I knew he'd laugh.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be your thing, is making people laugh. And
I hope.
You certainly did that for us tonight.
You should have heard me in the 70s when George Carlin had all his albums out. I can do his voice dead on. And I had a couple of his bits memorized. And I still will step into without thinking about it, his cadence.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well,
I'll leave this with a quote from George.
Please.
Look at your average person. Average intelligence, whatever. Half the world is dumber than he is.
Guys, Tim, thank you so much. This was
my pleasure. I had a good time.
I'm glad you did. Everybody in the chat, thank you for joining us tonight on all the channels that are simulcasting this. It was a great time. And Tim, we will definitely try and have you back on at some point in the future if we can, because my God, man.
Yeah, we're ready
in a while.
Let me know.
I haven't laughed this hard since COVID, baby. So thank you for that.
Good. During COVID, I read children's stories and fairy tales because several of my friends had little kids that were going up the walls. So go on my YouTube channel. You'll find them. I read some Finnish and Irish. You know, I was looking for oddball stuff that was of a right length to read for small children. I had a great time doing that. Now I got a little critical roly because you're reading a story to a kid.
Well,
you know, voices.
We'll forgive you this once.
We'll forgive you. From the half-assed actor side of the conversation.
But no, I use a different range and timbre in my voice when I'm reading to kids.
So the channel is Curmudgeon in the Cellar?
Yep, Curmudgeon in the Cellar on YouTube. If you can't spell curmudgeon, spell Kaskoid, Kaskoid, or my last name. Any one of those three will get you to it.
There you
Just
go.
make sure you get on to the newest ones, because depending upon what's been watched, I'll go up there and there's number 308 next to 146 because somebody was watching 146.
Nice.
And you can go back to the beginning or just jump in where I'm at now. If
all right, guys,
go back to the beginning.
Head over, subscribe to that, and please subscribe to all of these fine gentlemen who have joined me on the panel tonight. GM Cody, GameMasters, Merlingster, I can't.
Mage's Musings, everybody.
Mage's Musings.
G.I. Joe Gamer.
And Logan from the Hilt, go check that out as well. And if you like what you saw here at Zen,
I just noticed that.
Go ahead.
As soon as you stop the show, I'm going to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop the show right now. So thank everybody that was here tonight.
Night, everyone.
Peace, love, geek, and we'll see you next week for another one of these with Mr. Larry Elmore is going to be here next week. You might want to check that out.
That'll be fun. The Country Gentleman.